Hello, my friends. Today, I have a bit of a different voice because I have COVID. But nevertheless, YouTube continues. And today, I got a viewer question. And it goes like this. I was wondering if you have a video or any tips on how to overcome a fear of change. I just know that if I let this meaning like the trend of this person's life continue, it will backfire in the long run, and I know I have a strong desire to control everything in my life, but I can't. It seems like there's a lot of inherentness when it comes to our being, right? Our personalities, our natural dispositions, they feel so defined. And in the past, different cultures have had extensions of this idea that personalities and life is already fixed, it's predetermined. So when you look at things from that angle, right, that's when you have class systems. And so, how do you become a class? Is it based on merit? No. When you look at old civilizations, it just tends to be. Wait. Okay. So it just tends to be based on birth. If you're birthed into a category, then you're fucked. A bad category. And if you are born into a good category, it doesn't matter what you do, you're pretty good. This trend still continues in certain civilizations, certain cultures, even today, to this day, explicitly, right? And in other cultures, there's a bit of a difference, but it's more implied by what? Generational wealth and your family lineage about having power, having vested power over certain business entities and land and things like that, right? So, when you look at life from this angle, that everything is already predetermined and there's nothing we can really do about it, then there's really no point in pursuing anything in life if we can't change how we live, right? So, how do we deal with that? Because does that mean we're doomed to suffer? Okay, so if that is the case, why don't we just accept the fact that we are of a lower kind of a societal structure, that we are born into this destiny of sucking at life, and why don't we just accept that and be at peace that life will generally be horrible for me, right? Even when you try to accept that possibility, there is a bit of a human nature in you that keeps asking, what if things could be different, right? And so, compared to one individual's will, the cultural effects of inherentness in good blood and bad blood and social structures and hierarchies are so strong because it's more than one person, it's like an entire country participating in it, right? So that's why civil rights movement always take a lot of force with a lot of extremism to kind of aid the process, right? But we keep fighting. And that's why we have the civil rights movement in the first place. We keep fighting our destiny. And one way of getting it is like extremism. And another way of it is like religion, right? And if you live a virtuous life, this life, next life, this life you're kind of fucked. Because why? Your past life you did some shit. And the current life that you get right now is a punishment for that. So, if you live a virtuous life this life, guess what? Next life, all good. But, that means this life we can't really be happy, right? So that's why civil rights movement comes after these like religious things, right? Because we, over time, believe more in the human nature and the possibilities of change introduced by human nature. Okay, so going back to the suffrage movement and going back to the civil rights movement, right? women weren't allowed to vote. And the African Americans were basically slaves. They were property. And there's many other traces of racism and that kind of implied classism. But it has come to change fairly recently, in the last 100 years or so, if my understanding is correct. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of bloodshed for that, right? There's been a lot of assassinations. There's been a lot of violent demonstrations, which makes Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr.'s approach of nonviolence that much more noble, right? One could argue that the self-immolation of the Vietnamese monk Thich Quang Duc is also a form of peaceful protest, although he immolated himself, right? It was a demonstration of the willpower, and I have a video on that specific topic. Okay, so why am I telling you all of this? Change is hard, but it's not impossible. But change, again, is hard. When you look at any major changes that have shaped world history events, they tend to be the result of a movement that spanned ages, or there was a very violent and sudden uprising that has led to a sudden momentum shift, right? Now, that tells us those are kind of the two ways of sustaining change. But one method takes more time. But at the plus side, it's a little resilient to karma. Because when you go the extreme route, you invite a lot of extreme karma back at you. So when you are engaging in the world from a fighting perspective, you naturally form enemies, right? You can't have a fight with no enemies. So the moment you pick a fight with society, the moment you pick a fight with the culture, you are inviting enemies into your life. And you know what? Like, extremism works, right? It does bring about a lot of consciousness, collective consciousness about the specific topic, but it incurs karma. So why am I talking about societal changes when you are asking about personal change? It's because personal change goes through the same kind of a process. It is either sustained over time, or you make an extreme commitment to changing. So, in Buddhism terms, right? The way that you're supposed to live, basically your caste, your class, your destiny, or your astrology sign, or your tarot card reading, the time that you were born, that's what they use in Asia. All of that is basically telling your destiny that it's fixed. And in Buddhism terms, that's what's called karma. You are bound to repeat the same life, the same kind of life that your parents, that your grandparents, and their grandparents lived. People like to throw around the term cycle breaker, but cycle breaking is actually very, very difficult. Because a lot of the times, karma is so unconscious that you don't even know that you are even participating in karma, because it's that deeply ingrained in you, right? So, Buddhism says you can be happy regardless of what the circumstance is, as long as you're alive and you can breathe. This means it's possible to be happy with your karma. So, suppose you want to control things, right? You will. And you're just gonna have an easy time just trying to control things. And then that'll feel good for a while, but then you're gonna accumulate the tax of like trying to control things that you can't, right? And you'll feel really bad. But at that time, you gotta understand, this is the fair price for just living the way I am. This is the fair price of not doing anything with my karma. So I'm taking the easy way out. I'm just living my life. And guess what? I just gladly pay the cost. It's like this. I mow my own garden, hypothetically, right? And it's so hard to mow my own garden and like do my own landscaping. But I want to save money, right? Okay, but I have an honest discussion with myself. And I declare, you know what? Time to get a landscaper. And then when I do that, I understand that there's a cost associated with it, right? But I gladly pay it because now I get like 3 hours of my life back every week because I suck at gardening. And the people who are good at it are really good at it at the cost of money, right? Okay, so just like that. You know your karma. You know that you have a tendency to want to control people. And you just act on that. And you gladly take the easiness of that life because you don't have to change yourself. But every once in a while, you will feel bad, but you don't suffer because of it. Because why? You accept this. This is how you are. This is your karma. And that way, even with your karma, you can be happy. Because again, Buddhism says you can be happy as long as you're alive. Now, but what if you want to deal with your karma, right? One way is to basically do what I do. 108 bows. This caption. Someone said they wanted to know what I was saying, but the caption wasn't doing a good job. 108 bows. Yes, that's it. So every morning, wake up at 5 a.m., do 108 bows, and meditate for 10 minutes. This is how you kill your karma on an ongoing basis. And you do it for 1,000 days. Quite simple, right? And now, this will be hard, but you have to understand, karma is kind of like your destiny, right? Which means in order to conquer your karma, you kind of have to die and be rebirthed. You have to go through that kind of excruciating process of dying, killing your old self and being born a new one. And so the voluntary challenge that you invite unto yourself, right? That is a way of slowly dying your old self and being born again. And that is the importance of sustained effort. So this sounds a little all dramatic, right? But I also want you to know that there's a simple kind of a way to think about it, and it's this. You're quitting smoking. So if I quit smoking for like 2 weeks, it's really hard, right? But then as long as I come back, I just took a 2-week break from smoking. I didn't really quit smoking. Suppose I quit for a year, but then I start smoking again, right? I just took a 1-year break. And now practically, when you have quit for like 3 years, you can realistically say that you have quit smoking, right? Your path has went on a sustained path of change and you were able to stay the course. So, like killing and rebirthing, that all sounds heavy, but I want you to think about it like this. You're quitting your old life, this really addictive substance called your old life, and you're inviting a new one. And you might be asking, why do the 108 pounds? What's so specific about that? It'll get you to face a lot of the parts about yourself that you resist. You will, number one, not want to wake up. You will, number two, not want to do the bows. And even during the bows, number three, you will want to quit. And when you're done with the bows, you will want to stop and not meditate. And when you meditate, you will want to open your eyes. So, every morning, you will be familiar with resistance and moving despite it. Your resistance doesn't get to predicate what you do in your life. You are the one in charge of that. So that's one way, the extended way of killing your karma, right? And the second more extreme way is like 10,000 bows over the course of 3 days. So this is a requirement for my Buddhist order. My Buddhist order has a program where you get to experience the monastic life for 100 days. And if you want that, you have to bow 10,000 times. Also, there was a Korean monk, one of the most renowned monks in modern Korea. And something special about Buddhism is that you can go to temples and you can have tea with the monk, right? It's a culture in Korea. But for this monk, right? If people wanted to meet with this person, the requirement was to do 1,000 bows. And then you can sit down and have a discussion with them. So it was like, that's kind of like elitist, right? You're supposed to be this like common man's monk, and you're supposed to be kind of the guiding light for all the lay people who are suffering. And he got criticized a lot for this requirement too, right? And in one particular instance, a crippled person came and really sought the counsel of the monk because the crippled person's life was full of suffering. But no exceptions to that rule. And the crippled person pleaded and pleaded, but the monk was adamant. Nope, you have to bow 1,000 times if you want to meet with me. And so they did. And during the bow, they had an awakening. And then after finishing, they left. So, this is the power of the extreme rapid death and rebirth approach. But, again, it requires a great amount of endurance and a great amount of will. I will say it is akin to a commitment to end your old life. And if you have that much will, if you have that much passion for a possibility of a new birth, then this might be a very good way for you, right? So, that is the fundamental mechanics of change. But now, as you go through this, right? As you go through change, there's something very important that you have to keep in mind. You cannot lose faith in your ability to change. Because the moment you give up on yourself, the moment you decide that this is impossible, it will come true for your life. Of course, you can pick up later, right? Later, many years down the line, you will want to pick up that passion of changing yourself again. But even at that point, the most important thing is to have faith. That things may seem like it's not working right now. Things may seem like I'm not changing right now. But I have to believe in me. Don't believe Billy. Don't believe your priest. Don't believe your, monk. Believe you. And that deep faith in yourself is ultimately what you are trying to find as you seek change.